Let's talk about how looking for an autism cure harms autistic people. Hey, folks. Welcome to the Autistic Adoptee channel. As the channel name suggests, I am both autistic and I am an adoptee. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about the dangers of thinking that autism is simply a disease or a disorder that can be somehow cured, quote unquote, cured. And we'll be talking about the actual harm that comes from this line of thinking, especially now, especially with the current societal and political situation in the United States. There has been an increased focus on trying to find a cure for autism, trying to prevent autism. And in particular, there's been a renewed focus on the long debunked notion that there is somehow a causal connection, a causal link between vaccines and autism. And this idea that autism can be cured, it dehumanizes autistic people. It tells us that a core part of who we are, the core part of who we are, the core part of how we think, the core part of how we process information, the core part of how we interact with the world and interact with others. It tells us that this core part of us is simply a disease that needs to be cured. And that tells us that we do not belong, that we are not wanted, that we should be eliminated from society. And I mean that because if you cure autism, you are eliminating this core part of us. You're eliminating who we are. You are removing us from society. And this brings to mind echoes of the eugenics programs in Nazi Germany, in which children were literally killed. They literally killed children who were deemed to be physically or mentally unfit, so to remove their genes from the gene pool so that they could preserve their racially pure society, whatever notion of a racially pure society that they had. And the irony of this is that Hans Asperger, who is touted as one of the early pioneers of autism research, he actively sent children to these euthanasia clinics to be killed. And the children that he sent to these euthanasia clinics, some of them were very, very likely autistic children with high support needs. Hans Asperger's research primarily focused on boys with low support needs. And in particular, he focused on boys with low support needs who were gifted in other areas, like in the maths or the sciences or in engineering or whatever, who were gifted in ways that could be of use, that could benefit society. And that's just gross. But even if like the fears that eugenics programs will somehow spring up in the modern day, even if those fears are premature or if they're unfounded, this idea of trying to find a cure for autism, it still is dehumanizing for autistic people. And it ignores the fact that autistic people have always been here. We have always been here. Autistic people have always existed. You can find us in early histories as, quirky or eccentric or reclusive or shy individuals. You can find us in religious texts as hyper-focused prophets, wise eccentrics, isolated holy people, interpreters of dreams, what have you. You can find us in folk stories as hermits, as seers, as changelings, as healers, as witches. And you can find us in medical literature going back as far as the 1600s. We have always been here. Autistic people have always existed. And trying to erase us through cures or through ABA conversion therapy, or trying to invalidate us by calling us disordered, it's dehumanizing. And worse than it being simply dehumanizing, but even worse, it takes resources and focus away from things that could actually benefit us and benefit others. It takes resources and focus away from early identification, from early intervention, from things that could actually improve the quality of life of autistic folks and other folks, like building support structures or creating programs that promote acceptance and understanding. I'm a 52-year-old autistic person who spent all but the last few years of my life struggling to understand why everything was so much harder for me than for my peers. Struggling to find a way to fit in, find a place. Struggling with constant exhaustion and mental and emotional fatigue. Struggling to understand social interactions, struggling to make friendships, struggling to maintain friendships, struggling to maintain working relationships. I spent my entire life in a state of burnout. I spent my entire life not understanding myself. I spent my entire life not liking myself. And had I known that I was autistic, had my adoptive family known that I was autistic, had there been any sort of understanding and acceptance of different neurological types, of different neurotypes, if there'd been any sort of validation of who I am, what I am, how I am, my life could have been so much more than it has been. It could have been easier. It could have been less isolating. It could have been more joyful. And it could have been less fake. I mean, after an entire childhood of being told to stop trying to be different, and being told to be more like your sister, and being told to sit still, told to make eye contact, told to stop talking, told to talk more, being told to not challenge teachers, not challenge authority, being told to do what I'm told to do. Being told to, yeah, you get it. After an entire childhood of this sort of messaging, of messaging that what I am, that who I am, is not right, that what I am is intentionally different, that what I am is intentionally difficult. After an entire life of this messaging, I learned how to mask, my external stims became hidden, or internal stims, or I suppressed my stims altogether when I was around others. I learned to fake eye contact. I learned to speak with inflection. I learned to not talk about my interests, special interests or otherwise. I learned to ask questions even when I was not interested in the topic or interested in the answer that I might receive. And I still struggle with that one. I learned to not be so blunt and direct, and I really struggle with that one still. I learned to lie. I learned to suppress my overdeveloped sense of right and wrong. I learned to not challenge every wrong right there on the spot, and to not challenge some wrongs at all, ever. And that last one is perhaps my biggest struggle. But even with learning how to mask, my bluntness and my lack of social skills, they still got me fired from my first corporate IT job out of college. And my bluntness and lack of social skills made me a pariah with the senior vice president of my division at my last corporate IT job. I spent decades learning to mask and perfecting my mask, to the point that now that I'm retired, and now that, even though I know I'm autistic, I still don't know how to take off the mask. I still don't always know when I'm masking. And I still don't always feel comfortable just being myself. And in spite of this, in spite of all of this, I had a very successful career. I contributed to society. I mean, I was known for my ability to coach, mentor, and teach. I built and I led high-performing project teams, extraordinarily high-performing project teams. I developed new project methodologies, and I designed new organizations for the company that I worked for. I taught leadership skills, and I was constantly drained, and I was constantly burned out, and getting out of bed was a constant struggle, and interacting with my wife took a massive conscious, concerted effort to not sit in front of a screen and shut down. I stopped reading. I stopped making music. I stopped writing. But I was productive. I was a productive member of society. And I would spare younger autistic people, I would spare them that life. Rather than see them cured, I would rather see them being happy, being themselves. Rather than seeing them be productive, I would rather see them happy, being themselves. Rather than seeing them successful, I would rather see them happy, being themselves. We've always been here. There isn't a cure for us. Focusing on trying to find a cure is a waste of resources and time and energy that could go into things that would actually benefit us, and therefore benefit everyone. Literally benefit everyone else. I mean, building a wheelchair ramp benefits everyone, whether they use a wheelchair or not. Creating an environment of acceptance and understanding of differences in how people interact, how they learn, how they speak, how they move, whatever, that benefits everyone, whether their differences are due to autism or not. Creating and making widely available occupational therapy oriented approaches to learning life skills, that benefits everyone, whether their need for that therapy is autistic or not. And the fact is that the hereditary nature of autism has been observed and noted since the very earliest research into autism. Even Hans Asperger noted the hereditary nature of autism. Autism is a neurobiological, genetically inherited difference in how brains process information, period, hard stop. We were here long before vaccines were. The vaccine, the notion that that vaccines cause autism stems from a paper that was later retracted, and several of the authors pulled their names from that paper after glaring holes in their methodology and in their conclusions were exposed. And following that debacle, there have been over a dozen large population-based studies that have been conducted in multiple countries by different researchers, all of whom have concluded that there is no link, there's no causal link between vaccines and autism. We have always been here. Autistic people have always been here. We benefit society when we are physically and mentally healthy. We are not diseased in need of a cure. We are humans in need of validation and support, just like everyone else. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, remember to drop a like and leave a comment or a question down below. If you're new here, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more content like this. Until the next video, keep living your best life and know that you deserve it.